Hi there, welcome to the Talking City podcast, coming to you from the Manchester Evening News. My name is Joe Bray, joined by Simon Bajkowski. And is the season underway? We had this conversation at Wembley in the Community Shield. Is it a friendly? Is it a proper trophy? Either way, City have won the trophy and they beat Manchester United. They got the revenge. Si, I bet you're delighted to be back on the road and back covering City for another season.
City are champions, yeah. The season started and finished. It's all over. Call it a day. Yeah, it's a really weird one, isn't it, the Community Shield? Because, I do count it as a game in my stats, but I hesitate to call it a debut for players.
This is what we were saying when we were talking about. Is it something full debut, competitive debut?
Yeah,
I think it is. But if I'm looking at, I said it on Saturday, if I'm looking at a player who scored 19 goals in however many matches, if he scored in the Community Shield, I'll probably bump it up to 20. But if it doesn't suit the stat, I might not. I sort of pick and choose whether I include the Community Shield or not.
Yeah. Whereas I'm more consistent, but possibly more flawed, both in that and in life. So, yeah, we move on. But it was, I said this to you. It felt quite nice to be playing United and not Arsenal, because obviously if City had beaten United in the FA Cup final, then City would have played Arsenal, by virtue of Arsenal finishing second in the league. And I'm not saying, wasn't it a good thing that City didn't win the FA Cup final, but it felt like, had it been Arsenal, everything would have started and it would have been suffocating. And look at how Arsenal have done this. Is that an edge? Last year in the Community Shield final, they won. Arsenal got a 130th minute equaliser and then won on penalties. And Aaron Ramsdale saying, "Well, that's psychological. We feel we can beat them now." And you're thinking, surely not, but maybe. And all these things. Whereas it's like City know they're going to finish above United, and United know they're going to finish below City. They each know that City are the better team. So it kind of felt like, well, yeah, United might be able to win because they can beat them on the day, and City aren't anywhere near full strength. But there's not as much to get into with it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the two FA Cup finals and this one, there's been a goal apiece in the cup finals that separate the team, and now a penalty shootout. It seems like on the day they can be quite level. But again, I was looking at the City team sheet. There's maybe 4 players you'd say are nailed on to be definite starters. The others probably had to fight for the place, and I'm including players like Doku and Kovacic in that. They could be in a FA Cup final lineup, but they also might not be. And it was probably more of a full strength United side that played compared to City, so you've got that to consider as well. But no, talking to the players, they were saying we want to win because it's wind in the sails and momentum is similar to what Arsenal said last year. So I think winning the shootout was beneficial, but at the same time they've lost the last 4 and they've still gone on to win the league.
Yeah. It was a bit, you sort of look at the Euros, don't you? And the Euros final, and like Kobbie Mainoo, who played in the Euros final and is back starting for United at the Community Shield. Luke Shaw would have started if he'd been fit. None of the 4 players who played for City, none of the 4 City players who played in the Euros final were even at Wembley. Like, Rodri's not even back until Wednesday. It tells of a different approach. And, I think City performed poorly in the FA Cup final, well below their usual standards, and were beaten for it by a United team who, if you lower your standards, they can capitalise. I think, United had the stronger team on the day in the Community Shield, but City still have enough. And certainly when Bernardo Silva came off the bench for what was, a lively cameo, it turned out in the end, got a bit of fight into them. So it was a good day for City, really. You're not at your best. You've not got anywhere near a full strength team or anywhere near your full fitness. And, in lieu of more senior stars, you have young players rising to the occasion. And you also end up with a silverware at the end of it. So, I think Pep will have been very happy in his T-shirt.
You weren't having his T-shirt, were you?
I was having his T-shirt. I just thought it was quite funny that he wears a suit for for big games. He wears a suit in the FA Cup final. He wears a suit in Champions League knockouts, and for this game, he just turned up in what has been his pre-season weather attire. It's fair to say, but it just kind of shows is that weird point. What is the Community Shield, and where is its level? Is it wear a suit? No, it turns out it's wear a t-shirt.
I mean, I did see Erik ten Hag leave Wembley, and he doesn't wear socks, so he had a sort of a weird, slightly short pants and no socks and fancy shoes, and also a massive he looked like a year 7 going to PE with his backpack as he left. So I don't know what that says about the two managers and where they stand. And
Ten Hag was in a suit for the game, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he was still in a suit in this, which he added to the year 7 look.
Yeah, just changed for the end. Removed his socks. The game's over, socks off. That's how Ten Hag rolls.
I think this is we need to sort of pack in football journalism and just look at what the coaches are wearing and go into that. You mentioned the young players. We had a look of Oscar Bob in pre-season, and I think he got 2 goals and 3 assists, was it? 4 assists? He added another very, very good assist for Bernardo Silva. He played very well, and he's looking like he's nailed on to start at the start of the season, you would think.
Yeah, and Pep, very interesting on him afterwards. He was very complimentary of all of the young players, as you might expect him to be. But he was talking about Bob like a senior player, like, oh, he does this, but we want him to improve on this. We want him to improve on this. He needs to attack all the time. Sometimes he doesn't make that final thing that we want, and we want him to do that. And when you're in that territory with Pep, you've made it. But also saying, he has something. I think he used the word unique, but it won't be unique, but it'll be very, very good. About his ability to do things in his first 2 touches, and we saw that with the assist for the goal. He's fed by Savinho and just leaves. Was it Martinez in the end? I think it was Martinez. He left for dead and crosses the ball, and I think he said afterwards he just assumed Haaland would be in the middle to knock it in, but instead it's Bernardo Silva who's out jumping Palestri and knocking the ball in the net. So very good from Oscar Bob, and you'd think he sort of would have a very good chance of starting at the weekend, and in a game where Grealish has missed for injury, Bob has again sort of said, well, I can play in the team and I can do this. Even all game, he just had that confidence that has probably built up over the summer. But the ability to just go past people, and I think he must have gone past all of the United defence at one point with the way he was playing. He maybe should have scored. He had a few chances where he sort of cut into the box and did well, but then kind of blasted it over. So he, continued his summer where it's been a Bob summer, really.
Did he do that last season where he sort of dropped the shoulder and goes past people? Because we know he's got the really good footwork and can squeeze out of small spaces, but I can't remember him particularly developing a reputation for beating players. But it seems like this summer that's all he's done. He's electric and really interesting. And
yeah, he did it at Newcastle, didn't he? Where he took it past the keeper.
That was more a footwork and a quick feet and a side step rather than a drop in the shoulder and just racing past him. And he did it about 3 times in pre-season per goal.
Yeah, no, he's kind of been more. I think last season he was pitched as a kind of hybrid between Grealish and Doku. Grealish and Doku being at 2 ends of the spectrum, and you sort of Bob has got more control than Doku, but more offence than Grealish. But he certainly sort of dialed it up more towards Doku, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely. And that sort of dink towards the byline and the cross he's adding that end product now, which is very, very helpful. And I think Bernardo Silva was asked, have you seen him step up this summer? And he was like, no, because he's always been like that. He's maintained the same level. But that is the impressive thing, that he's got confidence in training and he takes it into games. So when you got players like Bernardo, who clearly knows exactly where Bob's going to put it and trusts him and knows the game, I think that's as valuable as anything the manager says as well.
Yeah, and sort of, maybe it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when he was playing in the academy teams, basically, he was like king of the pre-assist.
Mm-hmm.
So he wouldn't necessarily get the goal or the assist, but he would be the one sort of pulling the strings and then playing that pass that allowed somebody else to tee up the goal. And when you have a player like that, it's great. But what Pep always says is you need to be involved in goals and assists. And he says it for young people, and he says it for players like Bernardo Silva. This summer, we've seen a lot of goals and assists from Bob, so that feels like a good thing.
I think that's what sort of point I was making of did he do that last season? He was more focusing on that pre-assist, and I remember a few balls like in between the channels and the fullback to set off the one to send that assist. But now he's doing it himself by just putting his head down and driving and beating the man, which is interesting. And when you talk about Grealish, he's the one who everyone says he does the hard work quietly and effectively, but he needs to add those assists, and that's sort of what Bob's been doing this summer. And I think it'll be very interesting now the season's begun to see if he can take that into the Premier League. And I'm quietly tempted to put him in my fantasy team when I set it up this week, because you look,
he's in mine,
and who might start. He is.
Yeah. I'm willing to get burnt on him. I feel like it could go
low risk,
spectacularly wrong, but what do we do this job for if not to have sort of an insider feel about City tips?
And then we can give it to anyone who listens rather than keep it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Another young player, Nico O'Reilly, sort of summed up what I think his summer's been like in a few raw moments where he took too long on the ball, but there was one point where the fullback went forward and he dropped back into a back three and then stepped back forward into midfield and did a press and won the ball, and you're thinking that is what a defensive midfielder needs to do for City. And considering he's never played there, I thought it was quite an impressive debut / non-debut, wherever you want to pitch yourself on that. But to play at Wembley in front of 80,000 people in a Manchester derby as your first major senior game, he didn't do too badly.
No, and I don't think you should forget that about the opposition and the occasion, the venue. It is different playing at Wembley than it is playing an under-21s game or even one of the friendlies in the States. O'Reilly's really interesting because he's been in the academy since he was 8, 9, and he's had loads of talent, loads and loads and loads and loads of talent, and he's predominantly played as an 8 or a 10. So 6 feels a bit weird, and 6 might be a bit weird. But then, Foden came through as a 10, and has never played as a 10 really until last season in the first team. He's been moved around, and you think if somebody's got as much talent as O'Reilly has, this last month of pre-season under Pep will have done him the world of good. But what will another month do? What will a season do? Even if we don't see him that much this season, actually on the pitch, if he can train with the first team all season, then maybe next year we're looking at a completely different player again. But he's someone whose potential is so big that it's really exciting to see what he can do. I don't think anyone at the start of the summer would have said to you that Nico O'Reilly would be starting the Community Shield as a 6. Either part of that sentence would have been difficult to comprehend. But
I think the last person who would expect that was Nico O'Reilly himself as well.
Yeah, true. And he didn't have a great game, I think we're allowed to say, but he was all right. And all right in those circumstances is more than good enough for where he's at right now.
And you look at some players who've come back off tour and have immediately gone out on loan, you get the sense, exactly as you said, a loan is not what he needs right now. I think it is just spending time under Guardiola and learning. And those times where he did keep hold of the ball and just run into trouble, if he learned when to play the pass and the right pass, then you've got a good player. You've got all the ingredients there, just need to package it all in the right place, I think. And I think he's an interesting player to see how he develops.
And because he's got loads of highlights in his YouTube reel, but none of them will be from last season because he was injured for so long of it and it was so difficult. So he has to build himself back up. But really interesting that Guardiola's choosing part of that building process to be sort of a deeper lying midfielder. I think it would be a stretch for City to rely on him as a sixth this season. Anything beyond like fifth choice or sixth choice option. But he should improve every week he spends with the first team.
I think he might be one where, say, they get a League One club in the FA Cup third round in January. We might see him and think, you can see the progress.
Yeah.
6 months' time, I think. We might not see it week in, week out if he comes on for 5 minutes, but if he does get a start in that sort of game, I think we will be able to see it. And yeah, maybe he'll play like the EFL Trophy or something just to keep on giving him those things. I was chatting to one of our United writers at the game, and he'd not really heard much of O'Reilly, as you can imagine. And he looked at his sort of stats and was like, this kid's over 6 foot. Like, that's not a normal City player to come through the ranks. I was actually quite impressed with how he put himself about, which is probably as impressive as we've seen him all the way through pre-season. Can have a bit of an idea, but when you see someone for the first time, I think that also says a fair bit.
Yeah,
move on.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, it's not important. Let's move on.
Well, what could be more important than a debut for Savinho, who came off the bench and City needed a little bit more of sort of attacking impetus, and he definitely gave it. There was, I think, his first touch, he plucked it out of the sky a little bit like Riyad Mahrez. He put a couple of dangerous balls into the box, drove into the box. He obviously got that sort of pre-assist by he found Oscar Bob, didn't he, for the goal when he just drifted over to the other side. Lost the ball a couple of times, not perfect, but he's going to be a player who excites fans, I think, even just from that small cameo that he gave. He wanted to get into the box and put balls in. Yeah,
and again, Guardiola after was like very, very, very pleased with what he's got to work with. Talking about how he can play on both wings and how much he came on at Girona last season. I think we shouldn't set expectations too high, but it wouldn't surprise me if Savinho settles, say, a lot quicker than Jeremy Doku did. And we sort of see, most interesting for me from the Guardiola comment on him was the fact he talks about his stamina and talks about he can play every 3 or 4 days. And the fact that Pep is already thinking about playing him 2 games a week makes you think that he is a real option already. And that, we do sort of have a bedding in period for players generally when they arrive at the club. But he's a young talent, but he's a guy who starred in La Liga last season and was one of the best players in La Liga. So, if they were to say sign Rodrigo from Real Madrid, everyone would be really excited and say, well, he can settle straight away. And I'm not saying Savinho is Rodrigo, but he's probably closer to Rodrigo than he's been billed as in terms of what impact he can have.
And he's a Brazil international. He's not unknown, is he?
Yeah.
If he wasn't a CFG player, he could be the type of player that fans would be like, we want to sign this kid. And then they do, and they'd be really excited.
Yeah.
Offering a slightly different opinion is that Jeremy Doku looked like he was going to be a world beater at the start. He got those 4 assists in the games and then had a bit of a sticky patch in the middle of the season. So maybe account for the fact that could happen as well. But I was quite impressed with just how direct and ambitious he was. And I tried asking Pep this in pre-season, and because you've got Doku now who ended the season really well, and I think has a big season ahead. You've got Savinho, Oscar Bob's doing it in terms of getting to the byline and putting crosses in. Phil Foden, when he's on the wing, can do that. We've seen Pep build a team that's basically trying to come inside and play as many number 10s as possible. And now suddenly we've got loads of direct wingers where they're all going to be putting crosses in, and it looks like just trying to go one-on-one and isolate players and do that. And when I asked Pep, he sort of turned it around and said, well, we've got Grealish and we've got Bernardo and we've got these, and you get why he wouldn't want to give away his sort of approach, but it feels like maybe we're going to see a bit more of a direct City this season.
I think so. I think the 2 words that will have excited people from Pep's press conference was natural wingers. Same with Savinho and Doku, we can play, them on their natural sides and see what happens. Now, Savinho came and said, I prefer playing on the right, but he spent all last season on the left with his left foot and did very well. It's kind of like, it opens up that Swiss Army knife, doesn't it? City look at every opposition and think, what are the best tools to beat this opposition with? And with the wingers they now have, it's that they kind of have more options than they've ever had under Guardiola, because they were very direct, and then they went less so and inverted, and dropping in so the fullbacks can get on. I think this season we're going to see more attacking play from the wingers, and maybe that means less kind of forward play from Kyle Walker and Guardiola, maybe.
Yeah, I think it has a knock-on effect as well, doesn't it? It's going to be
but then the Community Shield,
wasn't it?
Yeah, but Community Shield, you have Rico Lewis bombing on from right back, but he's playing inside as an 8 and sort of crashing into the box from right back. So maybe you see that with Guardiola, and Walker and the fullbacks still get forward, but they go inside to allow the wingers to go outside, and also with Walker and Lewis, but Walker is kind of king of the overlap as well, isn't he? He's still got the legs to go past a winger to offer an option. So it feels like they've got more attacking options than they had last season.
Even though they've just sold one of the 2 strikers, which we will get onto. One last point on that is I'm reminded of the quotes from Thomas Crooken, the academy director, who came in last season and said, "We need to find players for 10 years' time. The game's going to get more physical, more direct and faster. And we need to build players for that kind of sort of profile of a Manchester City player in a decade's time." And it feels like the first team might be moving to that way as well. So if Guardiola and his academy are on the similar sort of page of where modern tactics are going, that can only bode well. It isn't that the academy dictates the first team tactics, it's the other way around, but it's probably a bit encouraging that both sides of the club are on the same page. We will take a break there. We'll be back after a short break to talk Julian Alvarez, who's just left City in a record sale for the club. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast. If you'd asked me a week ago if Julian Alvarez was going to leave, I'd have probably said no, because it seemed like he may have thought about leaving, but no one was there to pay the significant amount of money that it would take. But in steps Atletico. They stepped up to the table, offered the money, and as is always City's way, if a player presents that opportunity and a good enough offer, they'll be allowed to leave, and that's what's happened. So Alvarez is off to Atletico. Is it 65 million, 63?
64 in the middle. Rising to 81 and a half. There's always a few variations. It depends on your exchange rate, doesn't it? But it's basically 75 million euros going up to 95 million euros.
95 seems a better number, doesn't it, to show?
Yes. Yeah. Which is...
Go on. The story was, Alvarez has said, I might have to think about my future. I don't play enough of the big games. And Pep said, off you go, have a think and let us know. And didn't seem too impressed. And then suddenly he's got his way and Pep's singing his praises, as he would do, because he's been a good servant. But it seems like it all changed quite quickly.
Yeah, although Alvarez didn't sing Pep's praises, did he? Sort of his big statement to when he left mentioned a lot of people. Didn't really mention the manager. We've spoken about how sort of weirdly frosty it got this summer, and I mean the Alvarez will be very happy with the move. City are happy with the move, I think. I mean, you can't turn down that kind of money, and not for a player who is not first choice in any position. It's a remarkable amount of money. It might prove to be a remarkable amount of money for, it might prove a bargain for Atletico. Might be a bit like Cole Palmer. He turns out to be amazing and he scores 30, 40 goals as Atletico fire up the league and do really well in Europe as well. But City won't be bothered either way because he's gone, and he was never going to take over Erling Haaland. Again, if you'd sort of said, because they both joined in 2022, if you'd said, "Oh, Haaland will outstay Alvarez at City," you'd have been surprised. But here's Haaland taking the captain's armband in pre-season and bowling up for season number 3, and Alvarez has gone. And I think it comes down to the old thing with City, whereby they let players go who don't want to be up for that challenge. And Alvarez has had 2 years of it, and wants to be the main man elsewhere. Will City miss him? I think the jury's out because he was very versatile, but there were a lot of other players. There are a lot of other talented players in the squad. They will have to replace the minutes that Alvarez had. They would like to think that a lot of those minutes will be replaced by De Bruyne, who was injured for 6 months, and Haaland, who was injured for 2 months. But then they do have other options, and Bob and James McAtee and people like that will be fancying more minutes on the back of Alvarez leaving. City still might sign someone else, but as it stands, they're probably more likely not to sign anyone than they are to bring someone new in. And if you can replace a player without going to the transfer market, then 95 million euros is incredible.
I think they're on course for about 90 million profit this summer after signing Savinho and all the players they've sold, which is very, very impressive. I would also say the player who might benefit the most is Phil Foden, because he was brilliant at number 10, and that's how we won Player of the Year, and everyone's saying this guy needs to play number 10 all the time. But then De Bruyne comes back and he's out onto the wing, and Alvarez, you've got to fit Alvarez there too. But if De Bruyne isn't going to play every game because there's so many games to play, now Foden is sort of the number one choice to step in and play there as well. And I would suspect he might get some more minutes as a false 9 as well. He can play there. He's clearly got an eye for goal. He knows how to do the Pep system. So I think he might get a few more minutes of a centre, and probably more so than the wing, which is a progression to him last season as well. You mentioned Cole Palmer, and that was the name that came to mind when I was thinking of how it will be viewed at City, and that there probably is some regret that it's not completely worked out, and you would like him in the squad next season. But if his path to what he wants is blocked by better players, Guardiola isn't going to tell De Bruyne and Haaland that they're not playing. You take the money and you run, and they've got over 100 million guaranteed for those 2 players, which is very, very good value, I think. And if he goes on and, like you says, plays a starring role in adding La Liga to his bulging trophy cabinet, then fair play to him. He's took the gamble and he's trusted himself. But you would also say at this point that he probably is taking a step. He's taken a step up in terms of he'll be a regular starter, but a step down in terms of the club he's gone to, and that's similar to what you would have said of Palmer last year.
Yeah, everyone who leaves City takes a step down, and it's Guardiola's whole squad is built on do you want to stay and compete with the best every week and play for the biggest games? Alvarez might play in more of Atletico's more important matches, but if they get knocked out at the last 16 and City win the Champions League, then maybe he ends up playing in fewer important matches than he would have done by virtue of that. But it's one of those things, and like with Palmer, it essentially came down to Mahrez leaving and Palmer thinking, right, well, now can I get my chance? And City saying, well, maybe, but we're signing Doku. So if you outperform Doku, then you'll get your chance, and if you don't, then he'll play. And Palmer thinking, do I really want another like 40 odd million pound player? In 50 million pound player in my way? Like, do I want it, or do I just want to be told you're the main man, you play every week? And it's not a slight on anyone's character or personality. People just want different things, and people want different things at different moments in their career. And maybe Alvarez joined at 22 when he knew that he'd be behind Haaland and thought, you know what, it's fine. I can maybe force my way into the team. Maybe I play even better than Haaland. And after 2 years of slogging away, and he's still not ahead of Haaland or De Bruyne or anyone else, despite how well he deputised for him, he's maybe he thought Haaland would leave after 2 years and then he would be the main man. And if Haaland had left, then City would have treated Alvarez as the main man and he'd have got what he wanted at City. But if you don't see that, then he's entitled to look elsewhere, and he's found a club that is willing to pay a fee that City are willing to accept. So it's one of those things where you can talk about regret and who's got the better deal and things like that. But sometimes these things just need to happen.
Let's remember this when inevitably in about 3 months' time or 6 months' time, we're talking about a player who's a top scorer in Europe and should City have let him go and Erling Haaland's been injured and all this. It's hindsight, isn't it? And at the time, it's a deal that on balance makes sense as well. And let's also prepare for City to absolutely draw Atletico Madrid at some point this season. It's overdue, I think, those two playing each other. Away from football transfers, an update of sorts in terms of the dreaded 115 charges. A report late on Monday night saying that the hearing will begin in maybe a month's time in September, and we might even find out early 2025. In one sense, as ever, nothing's changed. We knew the hearing was going to take place at some point. They're going to find out a few months after that, a few weeks after that. But if it was early 2025, that would probably help quite a few things in terms of just drawing a line and getting an answer and moving on for the next season. If it drags on into next summer, then there's a lot more dominoes that have to fall in terms of planning for the season after that and who's going to be there and where are they going to be playing.
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, I think City and the Premier League should be applauded for the trial being heard earlier than it would have done. Everyone wants to hear it swiftly, so well done them for bringing it forward. I'm sure they will get all the credit they're owed for that decision. Yeah, it's going to take up most of this year, and yeah, it would be great for everyone if an announcement or a public decision is as early as early next year. But I think the whole time frame essentially is so it's all sorted by the end of this season. Which is still the case. I think so. Yeah, I mean, if it starts earlier, then maybe City get indicators of how it's gone earlier, and they can sort these things internally. But yeah, it's still going to be a long, drawn out process of which we're going to hear very little of. I think
we'll hear a lot of commentary on it.
Oh yeah.
Especially if we know that there's a trial taking place right now in September or October, then I think the opinions on it are going to go even more extreme and through the roof. And
yeah, you get the stadium announcer down to the court. They can sort of read out Lord Panic's name as he walks into the courtroom.
I think
get the mascots down there.
Yeah, the little lad who did the reading out, I think he's got that.
Yeah.
What a season we got to look forward to as well. When it comes to that, everything City do is going to be but even more so than previously. One negative I think we might have to touch upon before we end is City have introduced charges for disabled fans when they're parking at the Etihad, saying that it's because of a lack of take up of the free spots, so they lose money. You've been doing a bit of digging, speaking to the fans in question. Not a great look, is it?
No, it's not a great look. It's not a great decision. I mean, you could argue that it's a financial decision. City say they're not making any profit from charging people £6. There were 300 spots. There's now going to be 360 at £6 a pop. Which is about just over £2,000 on a match day. So City say they're not making money off it. That money will just go into keeping the car parks running. But the disabled fans sort of say, well, we're still taking over £100 off us individually a season, and they're expecting it to go up to to double next season. But also this season, they've already paid for season tickets and like signed up to club schemes and that, and then they're just told, oh yeah, you've got to pay this extra money. And whether it is the right thing to do or not, I don't think the timing of it or the manner in which it has been done has been particularly good. Because a lot of disabled fans I've spoken to say there is a problem with, no shows. But they also say there's a lot of issues with people trying to cancel and not being able to get through to the City team, or like having to fill out this form that doesn't always work. So they sort of suggested like you have with restaurants where, you put a deposit down and you put your card details in, and if you don't turn up, then you get charged. And they've just not been listened to, and they feel like they've not been listened to. And it's one of a number of issues that don't just concern disabled fans. Season tickets, another example where fans don't feel like they are being listened to by the club and feel like they're having money taken off them when the club are happy to spend on other things. It's fans have pointed out in the last week or so, they've sold Alvarez for a club record. They also got a $2 million fine from the Premier League for late kickoffs, and they've paid that very quickly. Whereas now suddenly they have to charge disabled fans for blue badge parking, which is not a good look and not a good thing to do, I don't think.
It feels like it's a lot of money for those disabled fans, but for City it doesn't feel like a lot of money to upset those fans who need that service as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people say like City have been really good for disabled fans for so long. So it's like, it's not people who just want to slag the club off. It's people who have like treasured a service and are now no longer feel as valued. People have pointed out like, as it stands for blue badge parking for Co-op live events on the same car parks that the football is held at, parking's free. So like, you have to pay to go to the football, but you don't have to pay to use the same car park to go to a concert, which is run by City Football Group, which also runs the football, which is charging the football. So it just feels like something they didn't need to do. And part of the reason when like everyone, criticises City for the money, and you sort of, one of the defences has been, well, our owners use that money to sort of make things affordable for us, and they've had like the cheapest season tickets in the league and whatever, and like as the years have gone on, we've not really had too many updates on whether they still have the cheapest and how many of the cheapest they have and things like that. But yeah, it feels a bit unnecessary, doesn't it?
Yeah, looking at it, I think that is the word. It's not needed, and it's as much of it's a financial issue for these fans. It's communication as well, which spreads out into other sort of gripes and grievances that various groups of fans have as well. But you've been digging into that, and there's a quite informative piece on the MEN at the moment, and we'll continue to canvass views of those who are affected and what they've got to say, and if there's any progress on that, you'll hear it in the Manchester Evening News. And that's it for now. We'll be back at the end of the week for a sort of a Chelsea preview and a season preview. So before you go, Si, can I get a quick, I'm putting you on the spot, but where is City going to finish this season? Are they going to win the league? And how, we're going to use this to start our conversation on Friday. So what's your sort of general overview prediction for the season?
Yeah, I think they're going to win the league, but I think it depends on Rodri. Like, I think unless something goes really wrong, you can probably say that Haaland's going to be top scorer and De Bruyne's going to get most assists, like in the league, full stop. So on that basis, like, they will be right up there again. Question is whether Arsenal have made enough progress to beat them, because they've been very close the last 2 years. I don't think Liverpool will challenge it as strongly this year. But I think it's going to be City or Arsenal, and having won 4 titles in a row, I don't think you can write off City. Certainly not in the MEN.
There you are. We can just keep it. We can probably just re-release whatever we did last season, and they're gonna win the league again, and Arsenal will challenge them. But no, we will be back on Friday to have a chat about that and look ahead to the new season. Give us a like and a follow and a subscribe wherever you find us on the podcast. Leave a comment and a review. If you've got any questions, leave them on the comments, and we'll try and answer them in the coming weeks as well, because we need ideas to talk about with so much football going on. It'd be nice to talk about some other things that you guys want to know. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back later in the week for a new season.